I'll take here Oracle Fusion, Oracle EBS. Or else let me take in reverse. First EBS, Oracle EBS, and Oracle Fusion. So we know very well, like in EBS, if any user need access for any function, okay, the user definitely should have access to the menu or submenu or specific functions. So when you talk about EBS functionality, EBS what we have? Okay. So in EBS we have basically menus. Menu. Within the menu we can have submenus. Okay. In submenu we'll have a functions. And if you have a requirement of accessing specific menu, say you want to access to entire payables functionality, in that case definitely you'll create the responsibility by selecting the payable serial menu. If you want to access to specific areas of the payables functionality, you can create your own menu, which we call as custom menu. Through that you may access to specific submenu or sorry, some part of functionality. And even if you want to access to particular functionality also, we'll be creating the separate custom menu. Through that you can access. That means if you want to access entire menu or submenu or function, what we'll do, we'll have a concept called as responsibility. With the help of responsibility only, okay, the user can have access to specific menu or submenu or function. So we cannot access any function or submenu or menu without responsibility in EBS. We know very well. Okay. Say we created one responsibility, say for accounts payables or general ledger. So if you have a responsibility for general ledger or accounts payables, directly with the responsibility you cannot do anything. So the responsibility should have an environment of specific ledger mapping, or if it is going to be subledger level, there should be mapping of primary ledger as well as operating unit. So without that mapping, the responsibility you cannot use. You can have access to the submenu or function or menu, but within that environment to record the transactions or to relate those transactions particular operating unit, you should have a mapping. If it is general ledger application, you should map primary ledger with responsibility, then only you will be able to record the transaction. If it is going to be subledger related responsibility, say payables responsibility, you should map primary ledger as well as you have to relate that responsibility will be associated with which operating unit. So otherwise you cannot record any business transactions. Means you will create responsibility, then what we will do, for the responsibility will map, just I am taking as addition. Okay, will be mapping primary ledger or operating unit. In case of subledger application, we know primary ledger and operating unit we must map with the responsibility to work on the particular environment. So so menu, submenu, functions, responsibility. The responsibility will give access to any one of these objects, and just with responsibility you cannot perform anything in any application. So if you want to work with some responsibility, we have to map primary ledger or primary ledger and operating unit depending on which responsibility you are accessing. It's very simple. Now finally what we do, we'll assign, okay, assign responsibility to user. Done. We'll assign responsibility to user. Coming to Fusion, how this practice will work, how this, I mean, how these things can be managed in Fusion, we'll try to understand. Here, say for example, okay, this here we don't need any example and all. Menu means, say for example, AP, you have a menu called as AP Navigator GUI 12. just for reference purpose I'm taking comparison. So with this, if you have a responsibility, the mapping of primary ledger operating, you will be able to work for that. Okay. So when I talk about fusion, so equal to menu, what we have in the fusion, equal to menu in fusion, we have a concept called as job role. Job role in EBS, okay, menu consists of all submenus and functions. In the same way in fusion, so job role is equal to menu. That means job role will consist of similar to EBS menus and the functions. Okay, so simple. Let's go with some simple comparison. So in EBS we have this also not required. In EBS we have a menu equal to that. In fusion we have job role, and in EBS we have a submenu equal to submenu. Here we have a duty roles. Menu consists of submenus. In EBS, in fusion, job consists of duty roles. And in EBS we have a functions. Here the functions are nothing but futures. In EBS also, here also same. So nothing but futures. Okay, futures, or you can call as privileges also. Okay, so menu is equal to job role in fusion, submenu is equal to duty role, functions are equal to futures, which we see in the fusion application. Fine. Responsibility. No responsibility concept in the fusion. No responsibility. No responsibility. So if no responsibility, how we can access to this job role or duty role or futures? So what happens is, okay, and okay, just we'll talk on that, then finally we'll get that answer for that. So in EBS we'll have a responsibility. We don't have any concept called as responsibility in the fusion applications, and in EBS we'll be assigning the primary ledger and operating units to responsibility. But here in fusion we don't have how to assign. What Oracle is doing is, say in EBS, say I have a menu, one menu called as AP Navigate GUI. Can we assign primary ledger to menu directly, or can we assign operating unit to menu directly? No, not possible. Or else I'll ask, just my question, just the point is, can we assign primary ledger or operating unit directly to submenu? Not possible. In EBS, directly we cannot assign primary ledger or operating units, okay, to menu or submenu or any functions. You can assign the primary ledger or operating unit to menu or submenus with a concept called as responsibility. If there is no responsibility interface to connect this menu and primary ledger or operating unit, it won't work in the EBS environment. In Fusion, what Oracle is doing, they completely just ignore this responsibility concept. They give an option in the system. What happens is, we can map our primary ledger or operating unit directly to job roles. So here we'll have a responsibility. Here we don't have any responsibility. So here we'll assign primary ledger or operating unit to responsibility. Okay. Reason why we are assigned to responsibility in EBS, directly you cannot assign primary ledger or operating unit to menu or submenu. Through the channel of responsibility we are assigning. But in EBS Fusion we don't have any responsibility. Here what we do, we'll take particular job role, say job role menu, I'll say AP Navigate GUI, which I can use as a payables manager or super user access. Similar to that, if you take example payables, in payables we have a job role, example is payables manager. Okay, payables manager. Here menu name is, as per EBS AP Navigate GUI 1.2. In the same way, in Fusion for payables, they given job role called as payables manager. Now in Fusion what we do is, directly we'll be assigning, okay, just this is as an example I'm taking the name. Okay, that we'll see later. The examples and all we'll take later. So here directly what we do, we'll map primary ledger or here operating unit we are calling as business unit, BU to job role. That means Here directly we are able to assign primary ledger or business units to job role, which is not possible to assign primary ledger or operating unit direct to menu, because here they made direct relation, direct mapping between the job roles and the primary ledger and business unit. That is the reason completely they ignore the concept called as responsibility. Now once here I'll take the example. Here job role is equal to say accounts payable manager. Example, if you take payables, example for job role is accounts payable manager. And what is the example for duty role? Here duty role you can say invoicing process. Invoicing process would be duty role. And when you talk about process, just invoice creation. When we say invoice processing, just we'll get many options: invoice creation and invoice inquiry and approvals, and there will be many relevant tasks related to invoice processing. But when you talk about futures, I may talk about specific feature that is nothing but just create invoice. Here no responsibility. So job role means, just example, take this plus your primary ledger or operating net. Okay, so here these all job roles are seeded. However, menus are seeded in EBS. Okay, along with product will be getting the seeded menus. However, we are getting the seeded menus in the same way. In Fusion, we'll get the seeded job roles for each and every application, and this primary ledger and operating nets will be mapped with these job roles. That process is automation in the system. When it happens, how it happens, we'll discuss anyway, but just for understanding. So primary ledger and operating will get assigned to job role. Finally, here what we are doing, we are assigning the responsibility to user. In Fusion, what we do is this combination. Okay, this combination, what we do is this combination will be assigning to user. This job role and the mapping, whatever we did, the job role and primary ledger or operating into whatever we assign, that will be assigning to user. As a user, you can have access to accounts payables manager role, which will consist of duties and futures, and within that environment, by using the primary ledger and in the operating net environment, you can work on the business process. So this is what to, just when you compare with EBS, how things works in the Fusion, what is the comparison and all. If you have any queries on these points, please just raise your question, we'll discuss and we'll proceed.
Yeah, hi Lakshman.
Yeah, please.
Lakshman, is the responsibilities auto install in Fusion?
Yeah, no responsibility concept in the Fusion.
Which means it's auto install part of Fusion.
I'm sorry.
Is the auto install means is a system provide the responsibility?
No. See, that's what here we are discussing. See, why we have responsibility concept in EBS. Responsibility concept, you have to access to specific menu or submenu. In Fusion,
Yeah.
without having the concept called as responsibility, you will be able to access to similar concepts called as jobs or duty roles or futures. Okay.
Okay.
So in this level, these are the points to understand. Okay, if you have some confusion, just please just wait for some time. Once we get into the application, it will be more clear to you, because practically we can see in the system. But still, you can ask me doubts if you have anything. Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other queries, please?
Yeah, example of submenu.
Example of submenu. Same, you take it here. The actual menu name is, here I'll take, the actual name is whatever we have seeded for payables. AP, navigate, GUI. Directly we will have a GUI here. 1, 2. Here submenu example is AP, say invoices, or AP payments or AP related setups that will comes. Because in the main menu we'll have all the process invoice
Yeah.
it will support for invoice process, payment process, or your configuration process. This is all you can be classified to submenus. Yep.
Right. Are the job roles are predefined?
Predefined, yes, predefined. And we have an option, we can create our own job roles also. However, we can create our own menus, custom menus in EBS. In the same way, we can create our own job roles.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other queries? Fine.
But the the duty roles are dependent on the job role, right?
Yeah, correct. Duty roles will depend on job roles. Job role will consist of one or multiple duty roles.
Yes.
Yeah. Here, however, menu will consist of one or multiple submenus. The same way here, job role consists of one or multiple duty roles. This duty role will have a one or multiple features. However, here submenu will have a one or more than one functions. That's it.
So end of the day, we are only assigning job roles to the users because job roles
No,
has
not job roles. I'm not calling it as job roles. I clearly mentioned here what will be assigning the naming convention. I'll be giving in the further discussion. But what I'm trying to say here, the job role plus primary ledger, only primary ledger in case of GL. If you talk about sub ledgers, job role plus primary ledger and operating it will be assigning to user. This combination, what is the naming convention we are going to discuss.
true. But the primary ledger and the operating unit, end of the day, you will be assigning it to a job role, and the job role will be assigned to the user.
No, when you are not assigning primary ledger and operating unit, that you can call as a job role. Once you assign, the name will be changed. That will be called as something else. That we'll discuss. That is the reason I am telling.
Okay.
That is the reason I am not telling job role will assign to user.
Yeah.
Understand. Correct. Okay.
Yeah, fine. Any other queries?
So that is PL/BU, right?
Sorry, I'm sorry, I could not get your question.
Yes. This is PL/BU.
PL slash. Okay, yeah, BU. Yes. In Fusion we call it as BU because
BU.
yeah. Since I am comparing with the EBS, I take an OU. This is BU. Yes, you know that. BU only, correct. Here I taken, but here I just missed out. Okay, done. Fine. Now we'll try to understand what are the different roles we have in the Fusion. Okay, different roles we have, because in Fusion the complete access, role based access. So let's try to understand what are the different roles we have in the Fusion environment. Take the point as role types. Okay, role types. Basically, we have four type of roles in system in our Fusion application environment. It's not specific to our finance. You take any solution, only four roles. The first one is, as we already discussed, job roles. We have a job roles and we have a duty roles. Or else let me take here. Okay, fine, no issues. Duty roles and data roles and abstract roles. Okay, these are the four type of roles we have in the Fusion. Let me name it as, just take it as a four type of roles. Okay, we have four type of roles: job roles, duty roles, data roles. So already we discussed, for job role what is the best example? Is this equal to menu? Duty role is equal to submenu, and data role, this combination you call as data role. Okay, for job role or duty role, if you are going to map primary ledger or business unit, that combination, I mean to say job role plus primary ledger only, or job role plus primary ledger and BU, it can be anything which is very specific, that we call as data role. say for example I am going to assign BU called as, say, let me take example Hyderabad business unit. In that case, this name, this is actually, just let me remove this. Okay, so this is actually job role. For the job role, I am assigning the BU. I am just mapping the BU called as Hyderabad BU. Now I'll call it as HYD BU. Okay, accounts payables manager. Now this combination, if you are going to map primary ledger or operating in business units to any job role, that combination we call as data role. That means this role have a access to specific data. Which specific data? Hyderabad BU data only. Or else, if you take example as this job role, just I'm going to take example of job role. Another example, general accounting manager. One of the role for general ledger. General accounting manager means this role basically will be using for GL. So if I assign to this India primary ledger, now the combination I am calling it as India primary ledger general ledger manager. So now general accounting manager can have access to the data which is belongs to India primary ledger, means data is specific. So that is the reason this you can call as data role. The role, if the role is going to be mapped with a specific business unit or specific primary ledger, that combination we call as data role. Now this role has access to India primary ledger, this role has access to Hyderabad BU, or else here you can map, you can take plus India primary ledger. Because we know like for sub ledgers we'll be mapping primary ledger as well as business unit. So this is now, this role have access to specific data. Which data? India primary ledger data, and again it's very restricted to only Hyderabad business unit related data. This combination we call as data role. And abstract role, it's a simple example, employee. The system who are working as user, everybody should be classified as a employee. Okay, that classification only will be calling as abstract role, means employee is not specific to payables or receivables or any specific solution based application. So it's a very it's a basic entity. So if you are going to perform, if any user is going to perform any activity in the system, you have to classify that user as a employee. So as employee will be working, so that classification will be calling, that role will be calling as abstract role. Who are going to act as employee in the system environment, will be calling all of them as a abstract role based. You can call it as employee or contingent workers, all comes under abstract roles. We no need to do anything with the abstract roles, those are seeded by default. System will take every employee as a falls under abstract role, or else if you are going to create contingent worker, system will take that contingent worker as also as a abstract role. It takes into that abstract roles. Okay, so only just will be just playing with sorry only will be playing with the job roles or duty roles or data roles. Okay, so and one more point here, the job roles and duty roles and abstract roles. Okay, abstract roles we have as a seeded, data roles will be created by system based on the activity which we do. Okay, job role is equal to, just let me take example here, same, accounts payables manager. Here duty role, I'll take an example. Okay, invoicing process. And data role I'll take as a accounts payables manager, where we mapped BU and India primary ledger. Or else I can take data role as a, against duty role also you can map the BU and primary ledger. Okay, this also you can call as data role. For job role or duty role, if you are going to map business unit or primary ledger, that means that job or duties will have access to specific data. That is the reason that combination we are calling as data role. And abstract role is a very common role. So employees, contingent workers, whenever you create system will understand that role is abstract role, which is not specific to anything. When you talk about these roles, this role is very specific to payables. This role is very specific to general accounting manager, accounting manager, very specific to GL. In the same way, if you take a receivables manager, the same way we have roles which are specific to particular application, but employee and contingent workers are not specific to some applications and all. It's a common in the system environment. So these are the four type of roles we have. If you have any just point to rise on this, just you can ask me questions.
So the data role is just like MO operating unit in our art role.
Data role, MO operating unit, that is a profile option here. One more point, in Fusion we don't have a concept called as using the profile options also. When we are working as a Fusion consultant on finance, you may not set any profile option. Without setting one profile option, you will be able to create complete enterprise structure, and you can work on all the applications. Very limited usage of profile options. Basically in the finance we don't use also.
Okay.
Yeah, because the MO that we are assigning to responsibility again, right? Yes, that is correct, but that will be assigning to responsibility. Here we don't have any concept called as responsibility. To do the mapping we are not going to take any help. What system will do is whenever you create the primary ledger or whenever you create the business unit, automatically what are the roles, seeded roles we have in the system which are specific to operating it, or sorry, business unit. What are the roles we have which are specific to business unit? That business unit automatically will get mapped with all those roles. And you create the BU, say I'm creating one BU as a BU1. When I create in the system BU1, Oracle is predefined which roles are specific to BU. Say Oracle is specified with respect to finance, say 10 roles, 10 job roles they classified, those comes under BU level. So automatically what system will do? System will map this BU with that. That means we are not going to assign. Whenever you create the BU, automatically system will create that data role by mapping that BU with respect to job role. In the same way, whenever you create the primary ledger, the system environment, what are the ledger specific responsibilities? Means general ledger related. I'm sorry, not responsibilities. What are the ledger specific job roles? What are the ledger specific general ledger related specific job roles we have in the system? Automatically system will be mapping the primary ledger to all the general ledger related seeded roles. That combination we call as data roles. Data roles will be created by system when you create primary ledger, or when you create business unit, or when you create the other definitions, whatever you do based on the solution. So this is a point to understand here. Any points?
Okay.
Guys?
These are the only 4 job roles
Yeah.
we have to play with, or can you create custom roles as well?
We can create our own custom job roles, duty roles, data roles also.
Okay.
Abstract roles, anyway, we no need to play with that. That is just for system understanding. Every employee creation falls under abstract role. We can create any role, job or duty or data roles. But basically,
So when you say
yeah, please.
the employee role, that also include the contingent worker or contractor as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. See, employee means when you are creating an employee, the employee can be when you are creating some definition as employment, that can be normal your employee or contingent worker. The abstract role can be employee or contingent worker. That's it.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. So, any other queries, please?
Yeah, next one is unit is called operating unit in R12.
Yeah, in R12 we call it as operating unit. In Fusion, the same, just naming convention they changed as a business unit. BU.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other queries? Because if somebody is going to ask the question, definitely that will be useful for others also. So I invite many questions.
Lakshman.
Yeah,
Lakshman, this is Shivakumar.
yeah, Shivakumar, please.
Yeah, see, can you, I think just a couple of minutes back, you explained about the BU PL mapping, right?
Correct.
About the job role. Can you just tell the hierarchy which comes first, like a BU or the primary ledger?
BU or primary ledger, see that is not a hierarchy. It won't work on hierarchy base when you talk about these data roles. When you talk about hierarchy as enterprise structure level, you can take those points into hierarchy. But when you talk about this, there is no hierarchy. For the particular job role, will be mapping. If job role is belongs to general ledger application, then we'll be mapping only primary ledger. Primary ledger. That means that role will have access to primary ledger to record the journals in GL. And if you are going to use the role which is specific to BU specific role, definitely to associate all the transaction with a specific BU, that will be mapped with a particular BU. And within the associated BU, if you want to record the business transaction, you should depend on primary ledger. You should use the primary ledger. Here we should not look for any hierarchy and all, nothing. The role will be accessing only primary ledger, or if a role is belongs to BU, along with the BU access, along with that, it will be using the primary ledger for transaction recording purpose.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the point. Okay, so that means finally what we do for the users will be assigning the data roles only. Okay, generally job roles and duty roles we can assign, but those you may assign for setup process or to get some privileges to do certain setups only. If you want to work on any application, business process and all, only will use the data roles. Okay, so data roles system will create automatically. These are seeded roles. Job role, duty role and abstract roles are seeded roles. Data roles are not seeded. Based on user definitions, system will auto generate whenever the user will complete respective definition. Okay, I hope clear this point to everyone. Fine. Okay, then just we'll move on to the type of users. Okay, what are the different type of users we have in the system environment? See here, basically we have two type of users. In EBS, how many type of users we have? There is no classification. Just we'll create the user and we'll be mapping the employee to that user, and we'll start working the employee level. What are the controls, approvals or something else, whatever you said, that kind of function, that kind of controls will be functioning. But here it is slightly different. Here how we'll be defining, it's all about employee mapping only. Let's try to understand these points. We have two type of users. The Fusion environment, we have two type of users. Okay, before we understand about this point, okay, let me take EBS. That would be best for understanding EBS user. When you talk about EBS user, what happens? We'll create the user. First point, we'll create the user. Then next task is we'll assign employee to user. Okay, this is how it works. Now this user can act as some employee user. An employee privileges, the user will be just acting in the system environment. When you talk about Fusion users, basically we have two type of users. Okay, we have two type of users here. So the user names, the classification, you can call it as implementation user, and employee user, or call it as business user, anything. Employee user, implementation user and employee user. Here in EBS, where we create the user, we'll create the user in the system administrator. We'll create the user in the system administrator. And in Fusion, where we create the implementation user, The implementation user, okay, implementation user is nothing but consultant user, implementation user. The implementation user, this in EBS we can create user in the system administrator. In Fusion we have two type of users, implementation user and employee user. Implementation user in the Fusion environment you can create in the application or tool called as Oracle Identity Manager. Okay, the short name is OIM, Oracle Identity Manager. For the same we have other name also. Okay, for the same you can call it as, instead of calling as Oracle Identity Manager, you can call it as IDM. So here these first two letters ID and M means Identity Manager. You may call it as IDM. You can find this application short name in this two short names. Both are same. OIM means Oracle Identity Manager. IDM means, here in identity we are taking the first two letters, and here M, IDM, Identity Manager. In EBS we are creating user and system administrator, responsibility or system administrator application we can say. In Fusion we'll create the user, implementation user in Oracle Identity Manager or Identity Manager, which we call as OIM or IDM, and where we create the employee user. This will create in HCM. Okay, HCM is nothing but human capital management. The HRMS which we are calling in EBS Fusion we are calling as HCM. Okay, so in Fusion we can create the two users. One is implementation user, other one is employee user. What is the big difference between implementation user and employee user? Okay, when you understand, when you talk about implementation user, the implementation user equal to, just you will create the user in the EBS. That means you are not assigning any employee to user. That kind of user we call as implementation user. Means in Fusion, implementation user never have any association with the employee. When you talk about employee user, the user, whatever you are creating user as an employee user, that employee user always will have association with the employee. That means in Fusion how we'll do is, in EBS what we are doing, we are creating user, we are assigning the employee to user. And in case of Fusion, when we are creating the employee user, so how we'll be creating means, while you are creating the employee, you will be marking that employee you require as a user. That means at a time you can create user plus employee definition. That definition only we call as employee user. Okay, just will be having one checkbox. You are going to create employee. The employee require access to the application means, just give that employee will have access to application with which username. Or else just when you are creating the employee, if you don't need any user and all, just create as employee. You don't need to provide user related credential information against the employee definition. But in EBS that is totally different. While you are creating employee, you don't have any option where automatically based on that employee definition user will be created. But Fusion they given that option, that definition only you call it as employee user. Employee user is nothing but user plus employee. Implementation user nothing but just user. You cannot assign any employee to implementation user in the Fusion environment. So what is the big difference in terms of functionality? So as an employee user, you won't have any limitations to work on any application or any functions. When you talk about implementation user, you will have 100% access to the application to do the configuration, but certain process based functions are restricted for employee user. Reason, if employee user is going to do that process, system cannot understand which employee is doing that activity. Reason, employee implementation user is not at all implementation user is not at all going to map with a particular employee. So that is the reason, that's how they differentiated implementation user and okay, employee user. If you have any queries on this point, please raise.
Can one person has a both role, implementation user and employee user as well?
when you say one person means employee only.
Person means, let's see, an
Employee.
employee.
But when you create as an implementation user, you take any name, system won't identify as a person or employee. It will take some username. That's all. For
Yeah.
implementation user, system won't understand who is doing that. Some user, unknown user doing that activity. This is how it will understand. That is the reason for implementation user, employee based, some process based activities are restricted.
Well, okay, let me ask a question a bit
Yeah.
differently. Let's say you created an employee Lakshman's
Yeah.
in HCM, so that's user you identify as the employee user, but you also wanted to do the implementation. So where do you want to get that access?
I want to do the implementation. I'm sorry. I created an HCM employee user.
Yeah.
Name Lakshman. Then what is your next point you are asking? I'm sorry, I lost you.
But if you the same person or same user also wanted to do the implementation activities, so can both
employee user can act as implementation user also, but implementation user cannot act as employee user.
All right, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, that's okay. You will get more. You will get more information when we are defining. Yeah, please.
Yeah. So this is managed through a middleware tool, or is it part of the financials?
Exactly, middleware tool only. But we just will be accessing to this IDM and OEM. Yesterday we discussed, right, in the demo session. We discussed which tools comes under middleware. So in our session we have that point also. Okay, see here. Just let's refer that. In the middleware we have IDM or OEM. Users and all will be managed by middleware only. Middleware. These two we call as we call as middleware tool. Or you just you can
And
call it up. Yeah, please.
Yeah, and in EBS it's all part of the EBS itself. I mean the user management.
Yes, EBS itself as a separate application. The application name is System Administrator.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Fine. So just we'll move on to this. Okay, any other queries? Fine.
Lakshman, that is regarding the implementation process. So
I'm sorry, your voice.
So I am creating myself Kishore as an implementation.
Okay.
So I'm creating my myself as an implementation user, Kishore.
Okay.
Okay. I do all the implementation.
Okay.
Okay. Now let us say there is some kind of an approval process. For the testing purpose, I need to approve that particular thing. So in how that will be formed?
No. In that case, if Kishore, as a Kishore,
because I am not an employee.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not able to approve.
Yeah. You cannot take that into part because system will identify an approval process. System will look for the employees only, not for just users. It will look for employee users only. Based on
while testing, for example, during.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Now during the implementation. That is during the development process. If I want to test certain things.
Yeah.
How can I do that?
The practice, what would be just will be creating. You're just testing. You create dummy employee user, give all privileges, which privileges implementation user is required. Just instead of creating as just user, create as an implemented employee user. Okay, that means user, you create user from HCM instead of creating from IDM. For now you want to act as implementation user. Okay, so which access you require that you map to that user. Now it is employee plus implementation user. You can do everything. Yeah. Fine. Any other questions?
Can we create the custom user type, or these are the only two options that we have?
Can we? No. Only these two options. I got some question in the chat window. Just let me look into that. No, answer is no. Only these two.
Okay, thanks.
Can we consider an end user as a employee? Yes, always. The person will be working on the application is end user, nothing but employee. Yes. Answer is yes. Fine. Okay. Any other queries? Fine. If no queries means we'll try to understand how to create the implementation user. Okay. Let's see how to create the implementation user. Now, simple point. As a consultant, as a finance consultant or any procurement or any consultant, okay, what access you require to do the implementation? In EBS, you want to do the implementation. Okay, you want to do the implementation in EBS. You have one user. For that user, which access you require? You have to assign minimum, what is that? System administrator responsibility, right? Administrator responsibility. In EBS, if you want to do any implementation, okay, if you are working as a consultant, minimum we require access to responsibility called a system administrator. Through that, we can create all the responsibilities, and from the respective responsibility, we can do the setups, and we can do the testing, and we can do everything. Means in EBS, the user require access to system administrator to work as a implementation user or implementation consultant. In Fusion, if you are going to work as an implementation user, we are going to work as implementation user, and here my question is, for every responsibility will assign primary ledger, only primary ledger, or primary ledger under business unit, operating unit in release 12. In Fusion, BU, only BU, only primary ledger or primary ledger under BU, right? So do we assign something to system administrator responsibility? We never assign, because this is not related to process related. Just it will give the option where you can define what are the responsibilities required, which will be using to work for specific ledger or operating units in EBS environment. The same way, here user require access to system administrator responsibility. So here in the implementation in Fusion, if you want to work as implementation user, you require access to job roles. Job roles are not specific to particular primary ledger access or particular BU access. Those are just like system administrator responsibility. Means within the system administrator we have one menu, right? Equal to that menu, that job roles. So if you want to work as a implementation user, what we'll do? We'll create the implementation user. We have to assign the roles. Just make a note which roles we have to assign. One is application implementation consultant. We have to assign this role, and we have to assign another role called as IT security manager. Okay, basically these two roles you have to assign to implementation user. If you assign these roles to implementation user, what system will do is it will allow you to do system related configuration. Okay, it won't allow you to do any kind of process. In EBS, what happens if you assign any responsibility to any user, from that responsibility you can do the setups and you can work on the process, because the menu consists of setup related functions and process based functions. But in Fusion, so those are separated. The process related, user process related functions are different. Consultant configuration related functions are totally different. Okay, so all implementation related access to do any application implementation, so you require these two roles for every user. So if you are going to use release 8 version, along with these two roles, you require one more role called as system administrators. Okay, in which scenario, which case this is required if you are going to work on release 8. Our instance version is release 8 only. This is definitely required in our instance environment. If you are creating implementation user, you have to assign these 3 job roles. These are not data roles, just job roles, which will give you the access to work as implementation user. Nothing but these 3 job roles will give the full permissions to do any application related configuration. If you are going to work other than release, it means you are going to work on release higher versions, okay, release 9 or release 10. In that case, these first 2 roles are enough for implementation user. Why means that's how Oracle they set up the rules based on the version. Okay, so yeah, please. Just somebody.
Yeah, Lakshman, Shiva here.
Shiva, please.
Yeah, Lakshman Shivakumar here.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, if I think as per the implementation user, whatever you said, the 3 job roles. So can you just go back to the row number 25? What you said at that abstract role.
Abstract role, it's nothing but employee. If you create employee, automatically
so
system
it's not only employee, right? Then that's correct. So if it's an employee as well as implementation user, right?
No. I'm telling this is applicable for only employee. When you create the employee user, every employee user will falls under abstract role. Every employee user, implementation user not at all related to employee, right? We discussed already. It's just user.
Correct. Yes, so, you are right.
Not abstract user. That's it. There won't be any abstract role get assigned to implementation user. Reason: implementation user is not at all employee. Who is employee user?
Correct.
Then automatically system will take abstract role assignment.
Okay. When you map these job roles to the any of these what do you say, the implementation user, then it will become a data role, right?
No. Data role means this job role should be associated with the primary ledger or business unit. Simple point. I'll just the point is, when you are working as a system administrator responsible, when you are working on system administrator responsibility to record the transaction, do you get access to work for particular business unit, operating unit or primary ledger in R12? No, right? No. That's it. Here also same.
Yes, sir.
Here also, when you are working as implementation consultant, if you want to do the configuration for payables, yes, you can do it. But you don't get access to record the invoice or to process the payments.
Okay.
That's it.
So I think whatever you explained, that job roles is only for the transactional part, right?
Exactly. The transaction means when you are recording the transaction, that should be transaction.
Yes. So mainly for the employee user or end user part, right?
Exactly. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Fine. So when you are creating the implementation user, you have to associate with these 3 job roles. Okay. So application implementation consultant, IT security manager, and system administrator. Okay, so these are the different roles we have in the system. I mean, these are the basic roles which we have to assign to implementation user. With these roles, user will have access. The implementation user will have access to all the applications which are available in the system environment. Now, what we'll do is quickly we'll go and see how to create the user. First, we'll go and create the implementation user. We'll see how to create the implementation user in the system environment. Okay, and one more point here is, so in EBS we'll get a default user. Seeded user called as sysadmin. Okay, in EBS, in the fresh environment, okay, so we'll have a seeded user called as sysadmin. With a sysadmin, you can just access to the instance and you can start working, okay, creating responsibility and everything. In the same way, in the Fusion, we have a seeded user called as FA admin. FA stands for Fusion Applications. FA stands for Fusion Applications, FA admin. Okay, fine. Here we'll get a default password as a sysadmin, username sysadmin, password of sysadmin. In the Fusion, it won't come as something default as the same name and up. That it's the DBA will be setting up, and anyway we'll be getting from DBA when we are working. But user point of view, the seeded user is FA admin. Okay, FA admin. This user basically for your kind of this is kind of to access, I can say, applications applications. If you want to,
Is this implementation user or
sorry,
employee user?
no,
Is this implementation user or employee user?
implementation user, not employee user. Implementation user. So this is sysadmin.
Okay.
Sysadmin is implementation user. You can compare in EBS. There won't be any employee assignment to sysadmin user. In the same way, in Fusion we have a user called as FA admin. It's you can just treat as a implementation user. With this user, you can access to the application, and from this user, you can access to any application. Even you can access to IDM also. From this user only, you can access to any kind of environment, including these middleware tools called as IDM and all. Or else you can have a separate login for IDM, but basically not required. From here, how to access we'll discuss. Okay, fine. That we'll see. Like this is a seeded user we have. From this you can access it. You can start working on it. Now we'll see how to create the implementation user in our system environment. Okay, how to create the implementation user we'll see in our system environment. Say create implementation, sorry, cursor is not, create implementation user in IDM. Okay, this is the task we are going to perform. Okay, let me just access to that instance. Fine. Okay, this would be the login screen, login page. So here I am just going to use some existing user, but anyway you'll understand the process. You can log in as a that any just some predefined user or seeded user. I'm just here I'm going to log in with some existing user. Just why I'm not logging as a that FA admin, I forgot the password and all. I don't remember at this point of time. So just for information I given, yes, I don't remember that password and all. So just say like as a FA admin user will log into the instance. Okay, once you log in, what you can do is, okay, we'll discuss all these points, what all these notifications, etc. Once you log in as a FA admin user and all, just you can just click on that user, or else here we have a down arrow mark, drop down as a kind of drop down option. It will open up some panel. Just click on user after login. Here we have one task called as setup and maintenance. Setup and maintenance. Okay, setup and maintenance. So here you can search for the task called as, okay, now where we are going to create the user? In IDM. If you want to go to IDM, you can route from here. To go to IDM, we have one task. Okay, what is the process we are following? First login, then go to user, just click on user, it will open one panel. There select task called as setup and maintenance. Okay, then that will give a screen where you can search for a specific task. Here I am going to give the task name called as manage job roles. Okay, manage job roles. What it will do, this task will take us to IDM. Okay, this task will take us to IDM. So fine, just give the task name as manage job roles, then click on search. It will display the task, or it is displaying the task called as manage job roles. Now just you have to click on go to task icon. Just click on go to task icon. Now it will take us to IDM, okay, or OAM you can call. You can see here Oracle Identity Manager. Okay. From the user login, just we are taking the navigation. Directly we can log into IDM also. I'll show you that process also. Just link will be different and will be connected to the same screen and all. Okay. From normal user you can log in and you can just come to this environment. From there you can switch to IDM, or else directly you can use the IDM URL and you can log in directly. Will be landing on this page. Okay. Anyway, we are following this process. Once you log in, go to just set up and maintenance task. Then this page will be open. The screen, just search for the task called as manage job roles. Then click on search. It will give the task. Just click on go to task icon. This will take us to IDM environment. Once you landed on this page, here we have one hyperlink called as administration console. Just you can see as administration, the pop-up you can see as administration console. Just click on this administration console hyperlink. Anyway, we are recording this session and all, but just somebody is taking the notes and all, so that's up to you. Okay, just click on administration console, then it will open up this screen. So here we have option to create the user. Okay, just you can hit on this create user hyperlink. Just click on create user. Okay, fine. Just I'm minimizing this. Just click on create user. Then you can give the username, first name. Don't think like this employee and all. Just for this within the identity manager IDM, just for just which who is accessing this, but this information you can write first name, middle name, last name, anything. System is not going to identify as an employee. Okay, so just I am writing last name as some Kalyan. Okay, Kalyan. And when we are creating the user from IDM, it's a mandatory you have to provide organization. Reality, this user is not employee, right? When we are creating any user from IDM user is not employee user. So reality, the user won't belongs to any organization. So that is the reason what Oracle did is the organization place they given one seeded value to select every time you create the user. Reason, whatever the model user model they built for every user organization is mandatory. To satisfy that condition, you should select the organization. Since this IDM user is not employee, is that employee is not this user is not belongs to any organization, so we have to select some dummy value for organization. Just click on this search, just click on go. There will be user organization called as accelerate users. You have to just select it. Select accelerate user, that is the organization name. This is seeded value you will find in every instance. It's not created by someone. Okay, this is what Oracle says. When you are creating user, you have to select this one, otherwise system won't allow you to create the IDM user. Then user type, you may select as employee, but reality is not employee. Just as a value for just classification, you can select as employee, but reality this user cannot become employee. This user cannot have employee based some functions to perform the transaction. So select as a consultant user. Generally in IDM we'll create the users related to consultant only. Okay, fine. If you are going to create for one employee as a consultant user, in that case we may select user type as employee, but reality is not the user is not going to act as an employee user. Just for sake of classification you can select. Okay, now what is the user login you require? I'll give the same name, Kalyan, and password. Here we have some password policies. You can click on this icon. It will talks about what are the password policies. When you are giving the password, what conditions or rules need to be satisfied. High level to understand the first character. I mean, just minimum one uppercase you have to take. There should be some numbers, and the password should not be same as your login name and all. There will be some password policies when you are creating. You can look into that. There are 6-7 points which are addressing what are the password policies and all. Now here I'm just going to give the password. I'm giving the password as, say, Oracle 123, O capital Oracle 123, and just give the password confirmation, O capital Oracle 123. Okay, done. That's all. So with this information you can define the IDM user. Just click on save. In EBS also what we do, we'll create the user, will assign the responsibilities. To work as implementation consultant, we have to assign the system administrator responsibility. Or else of course we'll be using the sysadmin user, through that there will be predefined responsibility which will be already mapped and all. But if you want to create the process wise, you create user, you may assign the system administrator responsible, so that that user can start working as an implementation consultant in EBS environment also. The same process here. We already created a user. See here the confirmation, the user has been created successfully. Username is Kalyan. Now if the Kalyan has to work as an implementation consultant, which roles we have to assign? Already we discussed. Okay, already we discussed. So those roles we have to assign. So here you can see system is taking the last name, the display name. Okay, the display name is nothing but here what are the name is getting displayed here. It is displaying as a winners. The same way when user called as Kalyan, when sign into the instance and all application, how the display name should come, that you can give as a display name and all. Okay, done. Now we have to assign the roles to this user. Basically, since this is a release 8, you have to assign 3 roles to get complete privileges to work as implementation consultant. To assign the roles, just go to this tab. Just select this roles tab, hit this roles tab. By default there is some role system is assigned called as all users. Okay, there is nothing to do with that role, just that is a default role, because Kalyan is a user. That is the reason it is addressing the Kalyan as a user. That's just a default role which system will assign. Select roles tab, then here we have one icon called as assign icon. Through this assign icon we can assign the roles to this user. Okay, just click on assign icon. Just click on assign icon and you can search for the roles. Already we discussed which roles we have to assign for IDM user to work as an implementation consultant. What is the first role? Application implementation consultant. Just give the name in the display name field, then click on search. Okay, to see the complete display name of the role, you can just drag little right. Now you can see the role as application implementation consultant role. To assign this role to this user, just click on this role and then click on add. This role will get assigned to this user. Okay, just search for the role and select the role and just click on add. Okay, the role is assigned to this user, and we'll assign other roles also. Again click on assign, and here other role name is IT security manager. Just I'm giving the partial name, then just hit search tab. It will give that name. The role name is IT security manager. Here you can just select that role, then click on add. then these two roles are enough if you are going to work on the environment of 9 or 10. But if you are going to work, definitely will be working on 9 or 10 only. But since now we have a release 8 and all, here we require one more role to support this configuration and all. Just assign one more role called as system administrators. System administrators. So we are using the system, so it is taking as those are some buffer storage, the names and all. Okay, so role name is system administrators. Select role and just click on add. Okay, done. We assigned 3 roles to this user. Okay, now we can log out, you can sign out, and we can log in as we can log in, sign in with our own user. So currently we are using different user, right? We are using the user called as winners. Here there is no concept, you don't need to save it. Once you assign, it will auto save. So after assigning and all, there is nothing you have to perform the function called as save and all. Okay, done. Now we can log in as a implementation. The username with the username called as Kalyan, and I given the password as Oracle123 O capital. Now system will ask us to reset the password, and it will ask some security questions also. In case if you forget the password, you can provide that security based answers. Accordingly, it will allow you to reset the password. Okay, but in EBS, if you want to reset the password directly, you have to go to sysadmin. There you have to query the user and re-enter the, you have to write the new password. That will be your password. But resetting and all, we don't have that option there. But here we have option. If it, until unless that is the process customized, you cannot do that, right? Here now system is asking to reset the password. For that, it is asking old password. Old password is Oracle capital 123. And new password, I am going to set something else. Again, in the new password, I should not take the old password, whatever the string I used, or which are similar to username. So I should not use 123 also. I should use different numbers. I'm going with some other name as some other name. I give a new password. So there are some security questions. If I forget the password, myself I can reset the password. Okay, the login level you can find the option called as reset password. When you want to reset the password, or if you forget the password, okay, basically we'll have option of forgot password and all. Once you click on that, system will be asking the security based questions, which questions you are going to select here. The same answer you have to provide. It is matching, then it will allow you to reset the password. We have this some security based questions and all. Okay, some other mid name and all. Okay, middle name and all. Just you can just same I am taking. This name means name only I am taking. I don't want to write anything here. Just this is answer to that question from my side. So pet name, pet. So city of birth and all. Just some text you can enter. Okay, this is my interest. I'm just entering. Done. Just click on submit. Then you can log in as implementation user. Now you have access to all this. You can see here. These all you got. These all functions, tasks, because this Kalyan, to use the user called as Kalyan, we assign those 3 roles. If there are no roles are assigned to this user, this will be blank. Okay, this only will allow us to create the it will allow us to do any kind of implementation related configuration. Even if you click on Kalyan also, you will be finding all these options and all, because all these options will get enabled to this user based on which roles are assigned to that user. Okay, based on which roles are assigned to that user. So this is a point to understand about user definition. We are talking about purely IDM user. Now we cannot create the employee user. The reason is, in Fusion, if you want to create the employee user, the employees belongs to, at the time of employee creation, the employees belongs to the user. Okay, the employees belongs to the user. So if you want to create the employee user, the employees belongs to the employee user. So we have to specify the employees belongs to which legal entity, and again the employees belongs to which business unit. It's a mandatory, you have to specify, otherwise you cannot create the user. So now anyway we didn't create any primary ledger or business unit, so now we don't have any option to create the employee user. Once we get ready with those primary ledger and legal entity, legal entity and business unit, once we are ready with the business unit and legal entity, then just we can go and create the employee user and all. We'll see at the time. For now you can create only implementation user. Now we can start as a implementation consultant, where we can start doing the configuration in the system environment. Okay, please you can raise what are the questions you have on this concept.
Yeah, Lakshman, if I have to create 100 users simultaneously, I know that's not a requirement, but in case if it has to be created, is it possible?
Which user you are talking about? Implementation
employee user or
employee user you can create.
Yeah,
in HCM we have a solution. You can load the employees. Okay. While you are loading the employees, you can set that employee require user access or not. If require, you can give what username and password you can provide. We have a templates to load the data. So along with the employee definition, system will create the user also for the same employee. But IDM,
okay, but for
implementation, no, because there won't be any requirement anywhere. Because
right.
Yeah, that is the point. Any other questions, please?
Hi, Lakshman, Niti this side.
Yeah, please.
After the business unit and the legal entity creation, we can provide the implementation IT security to employee.
Not required. I mean, okay, IT security and all. Yes, once you create that user you want to use as implementation user, yes, you have to assign these roles.
Okay, IT security and implementation both.
Both, three, whatever we discussed: IT security manager, application implementation consultant, system administrator also.
Okay.
When you create any HCM user, employee user, automatically system will just mapping the employee role also automatically. That is also one of the setup in the system, or else manually you can assign the role called as employee.
So, Lakshman.
Yeah, please.
Sorry.
Quick question.
Yeah.
The employee users gets created by HCM. So what if the client's not using HCM?
Not required.
So in that case,
not required. You may not take license and all. Still, you'll have an option. If you are using any solution, since that is going to be basic requirement for any solution, so that function will be getting for these kind of definitions. It's not mandatory how to use, because you are not going to manage everything related to employee. Just you are going to create definition of user. That's all. You'll get it.
Still have to use the HCM to create the employee.
Not required. You no need to touch HCM. By default, the HCM user function will be given to any kind of for any solution. Just employee definition. That's all.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Just like in EBS, we share that HR table.
Exactly. That's all. That is the point.
All right.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, Lakshman, I think this is Shiva.
Yeah. Lakshman, this is Kishore.
Kishore, please.
Yeah. So I lost you for about 10 minutes. So I missed that creating the implementation user part.
Okay.
Do you mind quickly showing?
No, we are recording the session. After the session, we'll be sharing with everyone. Right from from beginning of the session, we are recording this.
Okay.
After session, we'll share with all the guys.
Okay.
Yeah. So apart from that,
Lakshman.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Kalyan here.
Yeah, Kalyan, please.
Yeah, the thing is, I have a question regarding the HRMS association with the employee.
Okay.
So in case we are not keying in the information in HRMS or not using that module, HCM module.
Yeah.
So how, by chance, how will the approvals take place here? If in case we want some approvals on any invoices or something, so how would the system know who is our supervisor and their supervisor, hierarchy and all?
So supervisor and all. Okay. When we are creating the within the HCM definition, that is a simple function. When you are creating the HCM user and all, that level only they give an option. You can create one employee. That employee you can associate with that. For that basic functionality, you don't require any kind of licensing from Oracle. See, just to support this finance process or any other process, what are the supporting functionalities required, those will come along with this particular solution only. We don't require. Still, you can do those activities.
Okay.
We can do that. We can do that.
Yeah, Lakshman, sorry for troubling you guys.
Please tell me like if you have any.
This is Shivakumar.
Yeah, sure.
So when you create that implementation user, can we restrict to any one or two BUs? Because I think this is given for all BUs, right?
No. It's not specific
So for
to
example,
any.
I'm going to create one
No. 1 second. Implementation user is not specific to any BU.
So we can't even restrict like that.
No, it's not at all specific. It won't work for any specific BUs and all. Employee users we can restrict. That is the real users.
Okay.
Yeah. This is not at all. This is this won't have access.
You can't even restrict that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
You cannot.
Okay. Thank you.
And you cannot restrict. But in terms of process wise, see, we'll be having based on what are the job roles you'll be assigning. Accordingly, this user can have access. If you don't assign anyway, no access for the process. You can allow the implementation user also to access particular BU and all. By default, this implementation user doesn't have any access to any BU to record the transactions until unless you assign the job roles to this implementation user or employee user.
No, I'm not talking about the transactional, Rashman. I'm just talking about even configuration also. For example, I have multiple BUs. Even for configuration.
No. That is not possible.
Okay.
And see, you can restrict the user not to perform certain setups. Say you don't want to allow the implementation user you don't want to allow the implementation user not to create the business unit. Just for example, I am telling. So you can restrict that. You don't want to allow one implementation user. You don't want to allow the implementation user not to touch payables related setups. That you can restrict. But you cannot, within the setup related data level, you cannot restrict.
And how do you do that?
We will do that. I'll show you how to do that. That depends on roles which you are assigning. Now we assigned all the roles, 3 roles, right? The 3 roles will give complete permission, complete privileges. I'll show you which roles will allow for which task performance to perform which task. I'll show you that when we are just creating the implementation project. At the time that will come across that. I'll show you that. Any other queries?
And when you work on a real time, what kind of, as a functional consultant, what kind of responsibility we get as a implementation user, right? Or
what kind of responsibilities? That depends. You are working for which solution and all.
Okay.
If you are working for finance and all, accordingly you may work for only particular payables or receivables. If the client is very big, if client is kind of small size clients and all, you may have to handle all the finance related applications, or else there could be one more consultant who will be supporting for finance implementation. That depends. Again, that depends on client and the process, or many factors will come into the picture.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Lakshman, after the implementation user creation, system has generated any of number of implementation users.
Any number and all. So
any number 1, 2, 3 maybe.
Yeah. See that will be just for every implementation user. Also, there will be some identification number. It will be storing. That will be stored in the database. For the front end point of view, we don't see any number and all. But employee case, definitely we can see that.
Okay.
It will create some ID for some sequential numbering for this any user, but it's not required, because if in case of employee, as employee ID, something else will be using. But here it's not required. It won't display from front end. Fine. Any queries? If you don't have any queries for today, we can wind up the session, because just of course it's just 9:40 and all. From tomorrow we'll have a 2-hour session every day for sure. So from tomorrow we can start working as some implementation user, implementation consultant. We can discuss more and more. Any queries before we wind up?
Lakshman, is this version is R8 or R10?
R8.
Okay, we are working on R8.
I'm sorry?
We are working on R8.
Yeah, yes. For trading, we are going to use R8. If you just learn from this version, you don't find big difference and all. The same process and everything same. Okay, so you don't find any difference when you're working on 9 or 10. There are some improvements in that. Some bug fixing is done, and very few respective to finance. Some features are added. Those also, I'm going to touch those features, which are come up with the latest versions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any queries?
Hey Lakshman, this is Amjad.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much. It was a great session. It's really good.
Thank you.
I wanted to request if possible, if you can share email contact for the group, so at least we can start communicating, discussing if we have any issues.
No, any issues you can contact me only. I'm sorry to say this, I cannot share other participants' contact information. I can share, but not now, after some later point of the time. I can do that with other people permission who are interested to have a communication with other participants. But time being, like for now, whatever the issue you have, whatever you are just planning to communicate with them, you can ask me. I hope I will be the right person at this stage, at this point of time. So I'll be definitely ready to help you out. If any issue you have, just mail us on the same email ID, whatever we are communicating, arptree.com@gmail.com. So definitely we can just we can help you out. But one more point is, what are the sessions I'm taking? I'll try to just clear your confusion or doubts which you'll be getting once you attend the sessions. Based on the session, if you are doing the practice also, I believe that you don't have any challenges also. That would be my response. I'll take care of that part also. I don't want to just show you something. I don't want to wash my hands and all. I'll just show you. I'll explain you. You can ask me multiple questions. No issues. I'll be happy to answer. I request to other people, if somebody is going to get bored because of other people's questions, I request you them to have some patience, because that will be really, because this is somewhat new technology and all. It's not completely, somewhat, right? So definitely somewhere that will be useful is whatever queries we are hearing from participants.
No, thanks so much. Actually, it was a good session. It was really nice.
Thank you.
And the rest of the people has a good question as well.
Yeah. Always I'm hearing very good questions. I love those questions.
All right. Yep, thanks.
Any points to raise from any other attendees? Fine. It seems there is no question from anyone. Okay, we'll wind up this session. This recorded session will be sharing tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow the first hours we'll be sharing this recorded session. Okay. Yeah, somebody said hi. Yeah, please. If you're interested to chat and all, okay, we can chat. Okay, fine. So thanks to everyone who are attending this session, and good night.
Good night. Bye.
Good night. Bye.
Good night.
Yeah, Naresh, yes, I'll see. I'll check it. I have to check the chart history to understand your above question. So my above question, Naresh. Okay, implementation user is not specific to BU. Then if have more than one BU, then we have to create one more implementation project. No, see, it is global. Implementation user will be working in the global level. If you create implementation user, you can do the setups for any BU, but for BU will be working, employees will be working. So specific BU access will be given to specific employee user. Just implementation user to do the setups for all the BUs. That's all. All the BUs, or you can say all the inventory organizations, Okay, for all the primary ledgers, whatever the organization units we have, for all can be done by this implementation user. Implementation is not going to work for any BU or any primary ledger. Implementation is going to create all the BUs, and the implementation user is going to complete the BU specific setups and the primary ledger related setups or any other application related setups. Just think implementation user as a sysadmin user in EBS. Okay, fine. Can you please share your number? Yeah, sure. This my number is it's 8106068686. Yeah, I done that.
Yeah, hi Lakshman. And what's the plan to share the instance?
So the instance we may give access from tomorrow. We can give from any point of time, but there are some.
Okay.
I think there are some formalities need to be completed to get access.
Okay. Okay. No.
Yeah. Okay. Fine then. I'm not finding any kind of pings also. Fine then. Okay, then see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lakshman. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.